welcome to our Board of Education meeting, our special meeting. Today is February 24th. Please stand and join us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The mission of the White Plains City School District is to educate and inspire all students while nurturing their dreams so they learn continually, think critically, and pursue their aspirations and contribute to a diverse and dynamic world. Oops, next. Do we have any announcements? We're coming off break too. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move to public participation. Will there be any public participation tonight? Well, all righty.
I'm sorry.
Oh, do you have public participation?
No, I was whispering to you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Next, we'll go right to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Eller. I apologize. I was motioning to Dr. Ricardo Teich. I was thinking perhaps we let the gentleman go first before us. I just wanted them to know it was me. So we will definitely do that, guys. I do just one announcement of course, for the Board of Education, also for the community. Coming up, I believe, right, Ms. Melendez, on Saturday the 8th. Is that the White Plains St. Patrick's Day Parade? Am I correct? I think so. Right, just so
Yes, I saw the sign. Yeah.
we'll definitely give a reminder, but I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar because it's going to be here in a minute. And so, yes, thank you, Madam President. Welcome back for our students and our colleagues who were away last week in midwinter recess. And happy 100th day of school.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
Believe it or not,
boy.
right? And so, the elementary schools did great activities with the kids, of course, very exciting
More
day.
than halfway.
More than halfway.
Yeah.
And we're almost out of winter. Hopefully we get there without any more winter weather. I know.
It's been great.
Okay, so two presentations this evening. Of course, we have the 25-26 non-instructional budget presentation, but we also have capital projects update, and Dr. Kartesh, I'll invite the team to go first.
We have our team that works with us on our capital projects, H2M, our architects, and Triton Construction, our construction manager. They're going to provide us an update on the projects that were approved by the voters in 2022. We've been doing that ongoing work.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Bob B. from H2M. I'm here with Chris Pearson from Triton. Just going to give you a high-level update on the construction projects that are going on. I should say not only construction projects, but also projects in design. So as the agenda here shows, we're going to be talking about the air, HVAC, and filtration projects that are kind of wrapping up. A couple projects that are still ongoing. We have some construction projects that are either closed out or closing out. We'll get a little bit more in depth on those. Some projects in pre-construction, as well as projects that are in design and awaiting SCD approvals. So with that, I will pass it off to Chris Pearson to go through the projects that are open.
Thanks, Bob. Evening, everybody. And just quickly, so with the HVAC projects, there were the original 5. So, Eastview, GW, Church, the high school, and Highlands. And so it's been going on for a while. There's been a lot. We've been battling the communications between the BMS system and the units. It's made a lot of headway, and our issues still are at Eastview High School.
Maybe just touch on what the BMS system is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the building maintenance system. It's kind of the brains that speak to each of the unit ventilators within the system. And but last week during the school break, we had good commitments from both the BMS, and this is communication between the BMS vendor and the equipment that's provided by Dakin. building, the building management system. And so we had a good commitment last week for them to really iron out a lot of these issues. It's well on its way, and it's, so we have commitments that everybody's going to be closed out within the next, by June, to have all this up and running. Following that, the commissioning keeps on going on with the units to make sure that they're running properly. And then finally, we still have work at Ridgeway and Mamaroneck that are the last two that weren't part of the original 5. All of the infrastructure, the piping, the electrical scope is all in. We're pending switchgear installation, which was, again, a long lead supply chain thing that and has been for a couple years. So that's being worked on, and I think by April, switchgear should be in at both schools, okay? And so we'll be up and running at those.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the switchgear has to do with the electric service, bringing new electric services into the building to allow power for the new systems.
And just elaborate what commissioning means.
The commissioning is an independent third-party vendor that comes in and checks all the systems to make sure that they're operating as they should be and signs off on them. Or finds issues that have to be rectified too.
You had said the original, or it's going to be wrapped up by June, the HVAC?
Yes,
What was the original date that was supposed to be done?
it was certainly earlier. It was about in the fall. It was supposed to be done. But there were a series of issues, some of them supply chain issues way back in time for some of the units, the controllers within the units themselves. There was a supply chain issue to get to. The team had to react to that, get a different controller within each one of the units. And also, I mean, to be honest, when you're cycling through a summer season into a winter season, then back into the spring, it seems like there's always things that have to get modified. You have to almost go one full cycle to make sure you get all the bugs out of the system. And that's been those two things have been the issue.
So on a percentage basis, how much was cleaned up during the break that just ended?
From what I understand, they got through it. They found a systemic problem, which was between the BMS and one of the control valves, and specifically at Eastview, and they think it's the same thing at the high school. So I think they've got through about half of them this past week, and they know, and they can go through the rest of it on an after-hours basis now that they know exactly what the issue is.
Dr. Ricker, don't we now run the risk, though, because of these delays, that it's going to get warm, and the students, the whole point of this was to have air conditioning in the schools, and because of the delays by the vendors, we're not going to have that, and that's what we're paying for.
Oh, absolutely. Well, potentially. The message that I'm hearing right now is that we're planning on having these operational by late spring.
Oh, signed off by June. I mean, we will have AC this coming spring. It'll be on.
And I think,
Yeah, for all schools.
also, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the challenges that we're having right here are really communication in terms of keeping the temperatures static and making sure that the temperatures are regulated, not necessarily that the units are operational. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
it might be a little cooler and a little less efficient, but the machines are, and I'm glad you asked the question, the machines are running, right?
Exactly correct, Dr. Ricker. It is really the fact that we've been struggling with this communication between the controls and the units. It's not that they're not running, they pop off, they go in and they keep fixing it, and you it's a little bit like, you find one error, you fix it, and then something else emerges. But they keep assuring the team that it's, we need to go through this cycle. We're not paying anything more. We are making sure that we're, holding the right retainage on these vendors. They have repeated meetings, weekly, and I chime in. We have to have this completed by the spring, no doubt. It's dependent on, the rest of the work that needs to get done as part of this project.
And just to reiterate, we do have enough retainage.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know, they're not getting paid, it's a percentage of the completion of the work. We have talked about, we have legal counsel at our owner's operator meeting. We talk about it all the time. Should I be, you know, should we be leveling penalties, which we can certainly do because they've been, you know, behind, but it has really been the issue of the original supply chain issues and having to really be creative in a very difficult time in our country with being able to get things that would just normally work. And so they've been working through it. Everyone's hanging in there. They know it's their obligation. You know, they certainly, this is a very large project to have every school building, every classroom, air conditioned, you know, essentially all at the same time. So it's huge for them and it's huge for us that this needs to be completed. And I think we're getting there. They keep, you know, finding, you know, how they have to fix and resolve, because it's software. Software issues is really the problem, and how one talks to the other.
Thank you.
And those issues are specific to the original 5. The two newer projects have a different system in there in place. The system that we would have preferred, but it wasn't available at the time of the construction for those original 5.
Just a quick question. Are the issues with Eastview and the high school the same with Church Street, or are Church Street issues a little different?
Those were a little different, but I think they apparently found a way through that as well. So we expect all these issues wrapped up within another month or so.
So there is AC at some of the schools at work.
Oh, yeah,
Because I've been at
absolutely.
some of the schools and they've had it, like, AC.
Unequivocally.
But it's just that we don't, everything up and running.
Yeah, there's AC at all 5 of the buildings that were operating last year.
Absolutely.
And the MAS and Ridgeway were scheduled anyway to only come online this spring.
And it's not every room.
Right.
It's specific, a handful of rooms in these buildings that there's some specific issues with, that they're tackling. And that's one of the things that's taking a little bit of time, because it's specific issues in specific rooms where they have to. There are some more broader things that they're picking out, but there's other items that are specific to rooms themselves.
Okay, so we have a bunch of photos come up, and again, you've seen these photos before too, but these are all jobs that were complete over the summer, and the final punch lists have been issued and almost in the throes of being finished. And these will include the high school field 12, the track resurfacing, the high school ceiling and lighting program, George Washington bathroom renovations, and the Damon House demo. And again, so these are all in the closeout process and just getting punched out. And this is the ongoing work, HVAC work at Mamaroneck and Ridgeway. Okay. Again, just the before and after of the Damon House demolition.
Those pictures of the Damon House demolition are not quite the same view.
No, this is, our project manager, Fred Camilli, comes out on the weekends with a drone and takes different shots, but I think he has a hard time
I
getting
know I
it.
was trying to
Yeah,
match
yeah.
them, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not easy.
The divot that you see there, that was where the basement was in the old Damon.
Okay. And then, there's the field track. And again, you've seen pictures of this before, just different photos of the high school ceiling and the lighting project that's over. George Washington bathrooms.
Yeah, that came out nice.
That's nice.
Permanent sinks came in.
Yep, permit sinks came in. We got them in there. And then just over on the budget side, on the HVAC projects, again, those are being finalized. We're wrapping up all the budgets because Dr. Vicario Tice needs all those budgets done and wrapped up by June. So we're in the process of doing the final cost reporting there, just to know that all those projects are trending towards a savings, okay? And legitimate savings. And then, of course, for the elementary school, the elementary school projects that were awarded earlier this year, we're managing those budgets as well, and those are also projecting a savings against all the recent awards that were made. And then finally, on the high school, and Bob will speak to the SED approval. We got to go through SED approval and public bid process. Until that point, we're closely monitoring the bidding climate, understanding what our budget options are there, and then, so hopefully we'll see approval soon and be out to bid on that.
We call these the infrastructure projects, but these are really the 4 elementary school projects, which have to do with the serving lines and the upgrades for the, excuse me, for the libraries and some corridor finishes. This did go out to bid last year. We did receive bids. We did recommend awarding. You guys did award, and we have, I believe we've got 8 out of the 9 contracts ready for signature. There's one more contract that we need some more information on, but for the most part, we're ready to go and get these things under construction on time for late spring, early summer, so we can get going and get working on those. And like Chris said before, I think that we're somewhere around $2 million under budget on these 4 projects combined here.
And just, what are they doing now? They're going through all the submittal process, material mock-ups and things like that, securing their material. So that, you won't see anything happening, but there's a lot of coordination, weekly meetings going on with all those.
Yeah, specifically to, library equipment, kitchen equipment, all that stuff is getting sorted out so that we can get those orders in and the material can come in on site for the right timing to get them all put in and constructed.
Is there any concern about lead time on some of those products, like we had seen with some of the more complex switchgear, as an example?
Nothing has really come up. The switchgear is kind of isolated.
Yeah.
That's a more broader thing. Nothing has really come up. You guys aren't ordering any custom kitchen equipment, so it is kind of off-the-shelf type equipment. And the library furniture, again, the same thing. It's kind of off-the-shelf. It gets manufactured, but it's nothing customized.
Great, thank you.
No problem. And okay, so then the remaining projects, these are projects that are either in design or up for SED review. And to be honest with you, there's actually only one on here that's not up at SED for review. So just a quick summary, and if you guys have any questions on any of these specific projects, just let me know. High school edition is up at SED for 2 separate reviews. One of them is the preliminary review for the BAU calculation, and the other one is a technical review. We had original technical review approval. We then resubmitted the drawings based on the new BAU design that we went over with you guys back in December. So both of those are happening in conjunction. So we're looking for a response on those fairly shortly. I did check the SED website on all of these projects, so everything up here is up to date based on this afternoon. We still don't have full review or approvals on these yet. The Ed House Electric Service, I said submit.
I'm sorry, the BAU review, so that's like a resubmission, because there was some question related to.
Yeah, so we changed the design, and then we submitted that for the preliminary submission for the BAUs. But in conjunction, we went back to the technical review, because they know that we actually tweaked the design a little bit. We wanted to make sure that they had that. We believe that they went through an engineering and architectural review on those, but they're not going to give us anything until the preliminary review is completed. With regards to the Ed House, this actually went in this afternoon, so it has been submitted up to SED as of this afternoon, waiting to get approvals on those. The Mamaroneck Avenue toilets went up to SED, I believe it was somewhere in January. We went up there for them. Rochambeau has been up at SED for a little while. We do have engineering complete. They are waiting on architectural. They did send us back some comments. One of the comments needs to be addressed via phone conversation with the reviewer, so we're gonna make sure that we complete that. We're pending on that. Once we do get that SED approval for Rochambeau, we will be setting up the packages to get those things put out for bid. And there will be, where we are looking to do the HVAC and some minor projects along the way with regards to Rochambeau. The last project that has not been submitted to SED is what we're calling the high school phase 2. So that is security doors, and it is the lift in the back of the building. We're probably about 75% complete. We anticipate an SED submission probably within the next 3 to 4 weeks. We'll get that up to SED.
Can you explain what corridor widening is and what it involves? Oh, sorry.
Can you explain what corridor widening means and what it involves?
So this has mainly to do with the accessibility, so it's the handicap lift in the back, which was part of the bond. We also did implement some capital work, which was security vestibules, and then also there was the corridor widening at the cafeteria, but I believe that we actually pulled that back, so that probably shouldn't be here on this presentation. That was a miss on my part there. Okay. That was something that was potentially going to happen as a capital project. We backed it off due to, you know what it is, once you get to 30% and you evaluate and you look at the budgets, that was something that we kind of pulled back and we'll decide to do at maybe a later time.
But that's what it says, like to make it wider, to be more.
It was
accessible.
specific to a specific area at one
Yeah.
of the cafeterias to
Okay.
widen the
Yeah.
corridor there.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of how are you going to widen
Widen.
corridors that are sort of thick,
So what,
you know,
and
You can, you did, yeah.
I'll explain, this isn't gonna actually happen as part of this project right now,
Yeah.
but what we'll end up doing is, I think that there was a resource room and a closet
Yeah.
that we were gonna shrink a little bit over by a staircase to make the
Yeah.
entryway to the cafeteria a little bit
I
wider.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
I kept thinking, how is it working?
Does anybody have any questions on these projects?
No, thank you. I don't.
And that's all we have. All right?
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay for the instruction. I do, you know, I would be remiss though, and this is not part of this presentation, but I have to share this, especially in the chance that our Tigers are watching tonight's meeting. I had the opportunity to connect with focus groups regularly with our students, and we just had a big one at the high school. It was great. I learned a lot. And of course, I came back with my list, and some of the things were, you know, we can fix them. And Ann is going to start, and thank you, Javier, you can start laughing because, you know, we wouldn't know unless necessarily, you know, the kids tell you. And so, as an example, could we get a couple mirrors maybe in some of the male restrooms? Absolutely we can. Could we get some partitions between urinals? Absolutely we can. Could you raise the water pressure in some of the water fountains so that we don't have to put our faces on? Absolutely we can, and I'm really happy to share that almost immediately, after coming back and sharing that information with Ann and the team, that they're already working on that. And so thanks to the GO at the high school for sharing that, and we'll get those items corrected, and it's great. You know, it's a great opportunity to learn from the kids exactly what they're experiencing as customers. And so thanks for supporting that as well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
So again, thanks very much, everybody, and for folks who are watching at home, this is a part in a several-part process, of course, as we get closer to the proposed budget for next academic year. We are following right along in our calendar, and tonight's installment, for your pleasure, is the non-instructional budget plan. But we also make sure that we do kind of go through the steps in the process leading up to tonight. Last meeting, Dr. Hand shared the instructional side. We, of course, have had long-range plan, of course, strategic plan, and now we're moving right to the full proposed budget presentation. So tonight, quick overview, summary of our revenues, talk a little bit about the tax levy cap and what we're seeing, state aid, demographic data, some staffing updates, employee benefits, contractual obligations, debt service, tax certiorieries, and making sure that we again, always remind folks of what that entails. And then our operational department budgets. Some highlights, right. So, cycle of planning, of course, the overview. We update our strategic plan annually. Goals and objectives, all connected to the strategic plan, all connected to the mission, vision, values through the district, and then right through all the departments, all the buildings, and there's a coordinated effort, everybody pushing toward the same student achievement, and making sure customer service and supports for our community are there, and then adjusted as needed. Long-range planning, financial forecast is developed using very conservative assumptions, as you know. Each year, we don't really assume that there are going to be necessarily any increases from the state level or increases at the federal level in terms of overall support. We were grateful a number of years ago to get foundation aid fully funded, and then we sort of recognize now we are in a new stage of the conversation, which is reviewing how foundation aid is distributed throughout the state of New York. And of course, there was a big study. The Rockefeller Foundation came out with recommendations for the governor to consider. The governor did not to put in any of those considerations in the executive budget, but there will be more conversations taking place about that and how that's going to look in the future. 25, 26 to 28, 29, we have forecasted, and we knew, as you know, budgetary shortfalls, which we're attending to. And we're going to talk a little bit about that this evening, how we've been attending to it for the next fiscal year, and what that's going to look like moving forward as well. And then we get to the proposed budget for the 2025-2026 academic year.
Years are flying, right?
They are flying.
So the projected revenues for 25-26 show an increase of 12.1 million, bringing up our revenues for next year at $277,965,500, right? And that's made up of real property taxes, so the tax levy cap, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides, increase of 3.4 million. Other tax items show an increase of 1.2 million. 1 million is related to payment in lieu of taxes, the increasing pilots with the city of White Plains, and some $160,000 that's related to interest and penalties on real property taxes. We've also increased the revenue estimate for interest earnings based on the high rates of interest rates that are still occurring. You know, we thought we would see more of a reduction in interest rates this year from the Federal Reserve. So we increased that estimate by $1.5 million. We also have lease revenue, looking to lease some of our building space for next year. The state budget increase of $4.8 million, which we'll talk about at length as to, you know, what the governor's executive proposal provided, which we're thankful for. And then we have the transfer of actually really using debt service reserve fund balance to help offset our principal and interest payments for debt, which also will decrease the tax levy increase, and then also the use of fund balance reserve from the retirement reserve to offset those increasing payments. So there are some key factors. The tax levy cap is complex, and the calculation is confusing. So I want to try to make it as simple as possible, which is hard to do. So there are some key factors in the development of that calculation. The tax-based growth factor, which are physical changes to the property tax rolls, and that come from New York State Tax and Finance, and it's based on the growth in the community. So for 25-26, that factor is almost zero, just as it was last year. And you say why? Because we have increased development within the city. But the pilot agreements, the payment in lieu of tax agreements, and you see, you know, on this slide, those are agreements between the Westchester County IDA and the city of White Plains to encourage development. Right, the IDA, the Industrial Development Authority, yes, agency with the Westchester County, with the city of White Plains. So those agreements are done, but they remove those property assessments from the rolls. So therefore, you don't get an increasing growth factor that would give you additional tax levy revenue for the growth in your community. So I hope that makes sense. So that really represents, when you take a look at the prior years when we did have growth, we would get at least $2 million for the levy just for the growth in the community. So it's somewhat of a double-edged sword. They're removing the assessments, which reduces the levy. Yes, we're getting pilot payments through a check directly from the city of White Plains or from the property owner, but it's still not working through the assessment process.
And the pilot agreements are not unique to like White Plains. That occurs across the state, but it's unique to us that we lose so much money because of the development, or?
It's not unique. It's pilot agreements are across every school district within the state. You know, again, those are agreements to entice folks to develop their property and to give them a discount, a rebate of sorts on their taxes. And so this way they have those agreements and they're for 10, 15 years. But it does have an implication as far as this. So you'll see that we talk about advocacy that our associations are doing, that we want to try to have the formula change so that the assessments with pilots, associated with the pilots, stay as part of the factor that's growing, you know, for the increase in property. So we want it to remain there. So we keep banging that drum. There was legislation that was vetoed by the governor a year or so ago. But, you know, our legislators understand this and they keep bringing it forward.
And also having seats at the table, right, that have been pushed as well, so that although we're part of conversations, we're not officially sitting at the table when these deals are worked out.
Right, we've been fortunate in that we have had connection with municipal government, with county government in terms of voicing, you know, the concerns related to the unintended negative consequences of the pilots as they interplay with the tax cap. Look, I don't think anybody, you know, foresaw this as being, you know, a problem for school districts when the tax cap was first initially, you know, put into place. But we do see it now as sort of, you know, a structural issue. Everybody understands the importance of development, the importance of municipalities being able to work with developers to make projects that make sense for the community. It's how that interplay between the pilot and the tax levy cap shakes out that's problematic. And I do believe, you know, even the Council of Mayors supports, you know, the pilots as an exclusion. You know, this is something that folks have been talking about. I don't know you know, the direct interplay as to why it was vetoed. I do know that it's back again.
Right.
So hopefully there'll be, you know, some life there so that it's assistive to school districts. Kane's right. You know, depending upon the size of the municipality, you may have more, you know, of those types of agreements, but everybody can be impacted by them. And, you know, ultimately, I think we all want to make sure that we're being, you know, attentive to the spirit of the tax cap to make sure that we keep property taxes, increases to property tax as low as possible, and making sure that communities are vibrant and continuing to meet the needs of all involved. So development is something that, you know, folks are looking at all over the state.
Can I ask one more question? So just to make sure that I understand, the advocacy is with the state and the county, not necessarily the city? Or is it with everybody?
Oh, yeah.
All
Well, the
the
city's
parties
on board. You know,
city's on
Mayor
board,
Roach
I've
is,
met.
yep, we've talked with them. We talked with the county at the time when county executive, former county executive Latimer was here. He understood. You know, new county executive Jenkins, of course, understands.
Yeah.
It's really at the state in terms of
Okay.
Changing the structure.
signing the law
Yeah.
or changing the, yeah.
Change the
yeah.
legislation of how
Okay.
this law is written that doesn't capture those assessments. You know, and with the pilots, you know, when you have them increasing, right, because the formula you'll see on the next slide is that, you know, you have to restate your prior year levy. So you have to, you know, it's the difference between the prior year and the current year levy. So when pilots increase over the prior year, that's going to decrease the levy. When the pilots come back on, those assessment rolls, those agreements are completed, then it will come back on to the rolls and it will be a benefit to our levy. But you're talking 10, 15 years these agreements are. And so that's part of the dilemma. The allowable growth factor, which is what we've always heard, the 2% tax cap, you know, just to say to you that this is, you know, the lesser of CPI, which is 2.95% for '24 or 2%, and that's applied against the adjusted levy that you go through this calculation. So that's where the 2% comes from. And then the capital exclusion, and it's probably best shown here. So the calculation works through, you know, restating the prior year levy and applying the 2%. And that restatement of backing out the current year pilots is why our levy is less at $202 million versus the prior year levy of 203. It's that $1 million that is being reduced off the rolls for the increase in the pilots, the 6.7 million versus the 7.7 million. So that you start out already with $1 million less. And then the conversation about the capital levy exclusion, and I should have put a subtotal here, but when you look at the exclusion, which is your debt payments, less your building aid, less the fact that we're going to use fund balance to reduce those debt payments, the reason is that we want that to be $4.4 million. And if you look 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth row from the top, you'll see that our prior year capital exclusion was $4.4 million. You don't want there to be a difference, because if it's greater, because the exclusion's being added back and we're raising taxes, then you're going to increase the cost to the taxpayer.
Right.
And so the commitment when we did the capital project authorization was that we would remain flat from year to year. And so until building aid comes in and the projects are completed and the final cost reports are sent in, and until we issue debt, we won't need the reserve monies to help maintain that commitment. That make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
It does.
And it's, you know, again, it's for folks watching at home, it's exactly the same spirit that we've always approached our fiscal house. Maintaining that conservative line and maintaining that openness in terms of communication of where we are, what's impacting us, right, in the system, and what we need to do to make sure that we keep to the commitment. So when you look, right, at the tax levy increase percent of 1.67%, you know, first question, so, well, are we planning on being within the tax cap? Absolutely. Absolutely.
50% less.
50% less.
Right.
Well, why? Why wouldn't you tax more?
That's the question.
Because if we tax more, we will not maintain the commitment in terms of keeping the levy stable for the project. And on top of it, next year, we won't have any ability to raise, which Ann put together in a very clear slide, I think, here.
Yeah. So, so the board did ask this question when we were presenting the long-range plan. And, you know, I go off, I do all these calculations, but it's really simply that difference between the prior year, you know, capital levy exclusion and the current capital levy exclusion. So if you're not using the debt service reserve funds to reduce the levy, to bring it down to the 4.4, then you are going, yes, you're going to get more money in the current year, but remember, it gets you know, adjusted in the next year's calculation. So then the following year, if you were to go for the whole 3.31%, you'd end up with a negative levy of $183,000, not covering any of your expenses that are going up 3, 4, 5, 10%. If we did it just to 2%, okay, $650,000 more for the current year, 25, 26, but then you lose the $650 in 26, 27.
And I feel like this is a question I hear, like, you know, if we can go to 2, why just go to 2? And this slide is very helpful.
Yeah.
In terms of explaining it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and it's a really fair question. And then you may have another community member who will come and say, only tax what you absolutely need.
Right.
And so what we've done, and, you know, thanks again to Finance and Audit, thanks to the board, thanks to the business office, what we've done is we have always maintained that line of what do we need and how do we get there by making sure that we're sticking to the you know, the spirit of the conservative budgeting practices that we've been. So yes, within the tax cap, yes, raising the levy for what we need, and yes, also holding true to the commitment in terms of our building projects, our capital improvements, and keeping it flat.
And understanding the nuances of the implications
Right.
of doing something else.
Absolutely.
And everything we heard with the capital project update is so interrelated, it's so integrated into all this
Right.
that is being done to develop the finances for the district. So it all impacts each other. You pull on one lever, it's going to
Right.
change something else.
And so, and as Ann was alluding to before, you know, we're in the process right now, where we're working with, and I know the board members, you're all part of all of these different committees, and working with our elected officials and advocating not just on behalf of the children of the White Plains City School District, but also the children all throughout the state of New York. And so the position that we're in right now with the governor's proposal is kind of a unique one, because really the message that we've been sending is thank you. Because what could have been in the governor's executive proposal was not. You know, and instead of seeing some of what would have potentially been draconian, you know, cuts that would have had very, very serious negative repercussions all throughout the state, as an example, for the so-called hold harmless or save harmless districts, over 300 of them, 380 throughout the state, they maintain that status. So, you know, we're starting out with a giant thank you, because the governor's proposed budget did come in and did support increases to all public school districts all throughout the state of New York, $1.7 billion in the proposed budget, almost 5%. Foundation aid. And again, right, Albany doesn't print money, so this is New Yorkers' money coming back to New Yorkers and their communities.
But it was a real change from
But it's
what
a
she
real
had
departure.
proposed last year.
Yes, absolutely. It is a major departure from where we've been at this time in previous years, kind of feeling like sometimes a little bit of a political football education, getting kicked around back and forth. And, you know, our elected officials work very, very hard here in our area, in our region, to make sure that our public schools are supported. So, you know, it's a welcome place to be, and we did express those thanks and appreciation to the executive as well as our local elected officials. So, foundation aid adjustments to current law, right? Consumer price index is 3.1%. There are a bunch of recommendations from the Rockefeller report that are going to be taken into consideration in the future. The problem right now is that we don't know how any one of those recommendations, when implemented, will interact with other recommendations. So you have to kind of model it and see what the best approach will be to support the largest number of public school districts throughout the state of New York. Because not all, as we know, depending upon where you are in the state, the needs are different. And how these changes will play out will be different. So there's going to be more to come there. There are other changes, the state sharing ratio, right? Go ahead.
So the Rockefeller Institute recommendations, those two recommendations of replacing the data with, economically disadvantaged data versus free and reduced, and the small area income and poverty estimates, updating that information positively impacted White Plains. The other items that she changed, the state sharing ratio, we're not a tier 2 district. And then, we're not a district that required the minimum 2%. Those are really for those hold harmless districts. And, as you indicated, last year, she was pulling that away, and she was also modifying the CPI to be a 10-year average instead of being based on current law. She funded expense-based aids, at current law, so things that we expended in the prior year that are aidable in the subsequent year at a specified cost ratio, so that didn't have changes. She's also, funding the balance of the community eligibility program, so those districts that are participating in the New York State Nutrition Department free and reduced meals will see that positive impact.
Which is
and
us,
then
It is
Dr.
us.
That's us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's us. And so again, continuing to be able to provide food for our children, really important. And also expanding those opportunities, even like, for instance, for after-school snacks and the like. And, that's great. It's great for kids everywhere. Distraction-free learning, I think we all agree, and this is something we've continued to communicate. I had 2 meetings with 2 different elected officials today. We all agree that, getting distractions out of the instructional environment is better for learning, whatever the distractions may be. Today, we're talking about the distraction of internet-enabled devices and how that can co-opt our time, and we all know that. The challenge, of course, is that the language that's being utilized in the presentation of this particular iteration is a wholesale ban, which, of course, you know, it's very difficult to, number one, feel like you're a partner in a process if the process is a ban. It doesn't really feel like you have a lot of voice. It doesn't really feel like you have a lot of agency, and it certainly doesn't feel like I trust you to be able to have the internal discipline necessary to be able to navigate the world. And really, that's what we're talking about. Now, of course, at the elementary level, yes, no cell phones. Middle school level, away for the day. No question about it. But at the high school level, what we're advocating for is that the governor just slightly modify the recommendation for the law to allow local boards of education and their school districts to best implement a distraction-free instructional environment. So we all agree on the same thing. No TikTok during calculus, right? Right. But I think, and I do believe that folks understand that the negative unintended consequences of, like operationally, a ban creates, first of all, it creates division and disharmony in the school community because it feels like as a student, you don't have a voice. It also feels like, if I have to take your property from you and box it up for the day, that you don't have the ability to just do what you're expected to do, which is keep it away during instructional time. It also creates, unfortunately, a system where, and I'll tell you, my inbox is full of unsolicited advertisements for companies that want to sell me a device to keep a device in so that kids can't access it during the school day. Well, I appreciate the marketing. I appreciate, the fervor and the energy there, but I also appreciate that if we're in a situation where we're mandated to do a certain thing, and also you're talking about the use of tax dollars to do that thing, you're creating the market isn't pure. And so I don't think we should necessarily have to spend thousands and thousands and millions of dollars to buy devices, to keep devices out of the
And
hands
for every
of
device
students.
they invent, then somebody invents.
Of course,
way
a
to get
workaround.
around
Of course,
those
of course,
devices, like
absolutely.
magnets I've heard about.
Absolutely.
Right.
So yeah, there's workarounds.
Yeah.
And the point here is, wouldn't it be better to be able to achieve that same distraction-free environment in partnership with our students, by supporting our classroom teachers, by talking with parents and guardians, and getting to a place where we all understand, yes, we also need to learn a bit of self-governance and internal controls, and be able to navigate the world and also have access to a cell phone. Huge kudos to our Board of Education ex officio members for running a survey at White Plains High School, collecting data from the student body and being able to submit that to us. And of course, the board had their first reading of policy, which, by the way, I've been sharing that policy with elected officials as an example, only one, and there are many throughout the state, where boards of education are very, very well situated to handle this issue.
Yeah.
The support from the governor in putting a law in place to keep your learning environment free of this distraction is very helpful. Allowing boards to figure out how to do it is even more so. There's that piece in there that the reporting will be posted on the district's website for who gets in trouble and how often they get in trouble. That's not helpful. That's not where we want to be. We want to be in a place where we're working in partnership with our students, and really giving them the respect that they deserve. And by the way, if I have to buy one of those bags for Joe Ricca, who can't keep it together, I'll buy one bag, right? Rather than 7,000 bags. And that's what we've been talking with folks about, and hopefully we'll see some movement there. So what's the long and the short of it in terms of foundation aid? It's good, and we're grateful. Increase of 2.6.
For current law.
Yep.
Due to our changing demographics in terms of increased pupil counts and a decrease in our property values, our tax rolls as compared to statewide averages. So our current law generated 2.6 million. The recommendations from the Rockefeller study that were in the governor's executive proposal added another 858,000. As we talked about, we were expecting mid-twos. The Department of Budget was only projecting that in their state aid estimates. So a total of $3.6 million increase for foundation aid. And then the expense-driven aids, again, current law, same reasoning, that generated $1.2 million over the prior year's adopted budget.
So it's good news. And again, it's the initial There's still going to be conversations with
more?
the legislators. Right, you could. Could that increase? It could. It could increase. Again, conservative approach. Grateful right now for the position that we're in, planning for the position that we're in right now. And it goes a long way to assisting us in terms of addressing those deficits that we were looking at for not only next fiscal year, but also the following. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So lots of advocacy, and I'm not going to read through all this because you're all very, very much involved. And all of this information will be posted to the district's website and all about the budget section for 2025, 2026.
I have a question, though,
Sure.
about the prior period adjustments and what's owed to us by the state.
It's always-
I just got, I want to say it's upwards of $300,000 was my last check. And I think we just got something
Stack.
the other day, another amount that's owed to us,
131.
131, so.
How far back does it go in terms
Oh,
of?
it goes back far, that we have a
2017,
list on the wall.
2018.
We have a list on the wall, and we record it as owed to us, but then we defer it.
Yeah.
Because we
Wow.
don't think we'll get it. She has not funded prior year adjustments. No one has at the state for the past 5 years. 308 million is owed to districts throughout the state. But they take that money away when they have overpaid a school district right away.
Right, of course.
And that's the argument.
Yeah.
So, the tax levy cap, always advocating for ways to address it now. All these years later, and we talked about the pilots and how that interplay would be very beneficial moving forward. Fund balance flexibility, allowing boards of education similar to what the state and counties and municipalities can do to have that flexibility in terms of utilizing fund balance. Again, we need to recognize that depending upon where you are in the state geographically, the cost of living is different. And the regional cost index needs to be adjusted for our area based upon what we experience. The prior period adjustments Ann just talked about, and then pre-K, and a lot of work has gone into pre-K, and I'm very happy to say, and thanks to Dr. Hand as well, White Plains has been very much in the center of this conversation in this area related to pre-K because of the success that we've had working with our community partners to provide those services to students and to also get to an understanding that in order to really truly serve students in partnership with third-party providers, that you have to be able to pay them.
Right.
And you have to be able to pay them what the market will bear. And so allowing, first of all, for fully funding pre-kindergarten, but also for allowing for the allotment to increase and to be able to get those funding streams together. We've really made a lot of progress here, and big thanks to Assemblymember Paulin, Senator Mayer, Commissioner of Education. I mean, these folks have been working really hard to try to take this feedback and get it right for students all around the state. And Dr. Hand and the team, I feel like, are pretty regularly welcoming folks from SED to come and visit our pre-K programs. It seems pretty regular, right, Dr. Hand? Yeah, absolutely.
And just going back to the regional cost index, so our local legislators are in favor of
Most, yeah.
looking at that and examining it and realizing that we're being shortchanged
Yeah.
here in Westchester.
Both Assemblywoman Pauling
Oh, yeah.
and Senator Mayer have that in their
Yeah.
annual letter to the legislature advocating for that change.
Yeah.
And so, as beneficial as this executive budget has been, I mean, it just makes sense that these modifications still have to be made.
Yeah.
There's still work to be done.
Right, and it's not, and again, it is not to say that this is not, we're not grateful that we're all working together and pushing in the same direction. It's not like, and then, these are all areas that have been part of these conversations
Yes.
really for years. And the Lower Hudson Education Coalition, Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, Lower Hudson
business.
Council, school,
Yeah.
right?
Right,
uh,
yeah.
Business officials,
Business,
superintendents,
right.
everybody's sort of saying the same thing.
Yep.
So we also, of course, as a quick update, we have our demographic data every year that we do. We have enrollment projected within 105 students, or 1.5%, so it's pretty accurate. The increase is a result of grade level differences throughout the organization, not just one area. And again, I'm not going to read all these points to you, you can read them yourself. But the long and the short of it is, we are stable in terms of our enrollment, projected for the next 10 years. We will have an increase in the number of students. Can we accept those students? Yes, absolutely. What about the development that's taking place in the city, Joe? Great question. In our budgets, we don't include projected numbers, or in our proposed budget, we don't include projected numbers for projects that have not been fully developed or not completed. But we do account for them in terms of our planning processes. So, looking at, for instance, new and proposed housing developments, there's 26 residential properties or development projects pending in the city. Right, so that's something that's still on the books, but hasn't come to fruition yet.
Right.
And the estimate from actually the City of White Plains Planning Department is that there'll be potentially 516 more students. But you can't, you have to wait until those developments are really online and see who's actually attending the school. You don't want to build your staffing or your budget based on something that may or may not happen. They use multipliers. Market value units are at 0.07 per unit to determine what the, number of students that would be generated from those units, from those apartments. And then, you have affordable housing units that have a higher multiplier that will generate more students. So, we make sure we're sending the information to the demographer of those students after projects are online, developments that come on board, who we're really receiving from those buildings, and then they're able to really factor that in.
And as we look ahead internally, it's not like we're not aware of these building projects.
Oh, absolutely.
What the implications are. So, that is also part of
Yes.
the mindset and planning that we think about.
Yep,
How do I read
absolutely.
number 3? Is that the difference between 5th and 9th? Is it the,
Fifth and ninth due to fluctuation in enrollments, yeah, in the past 10, yeah.
so is it because kids are coming in and going out, or
Yeah.
is it, that's what it is?
Yeah, it's the migration, transition patterns. We were trying to figure out the best way, the clearest way to be able to articulate that, because doesn't normally make sense.
Kids in, kids out,
Kids in, kids out,
that happens all the time. So that
Those are the
Yeah, no, it
grades.
makes sense.
transition,
Yeah.
and getting that trend information
yeah.
is always the trickiest.
Yep,
Can we also point out this,
Yeah, I was
before
gonna
last
get-
one?
yeah,
With,
yeah.
there's less kids going
Yes.
out of our schools, because people always talk about
Yeah.
that, so I just want to make sure that you highlight that.
Yeah.
It's been declining
Yeah,
now for
that-
a number of years.
Yeah, that has, and look, for a variety of reasons, right? I get a chance to talk to parents, guardians all the time about this. We've seen live births decline. The cohorts for kindergarten are going to be stable, and then yes, again, this year we're seeing again a decline in the number of students whose parents, guardians, or as a familial unit choose to go to a private, parochial, or independent school in the White Plains City School District. This is something we've seen for a number of years, those numbers declining. And they decline for a variety of reasons, just as folks decide to attend different types of schools for a variety of reasons. And then housing turnover was the highest in 2021, lowest in 23. And you all know this, when you see a house on the market, it goes fast. It's a great place to live.
And over asking price. right?
Yes, fast over. And then just giving you a sense of enrollment. And again, when you really
Can I
look.
just comment on this graph, which I always comment on? It doesn't look flat or stable because we're magnifying just a small piece.
Yes.
So-
It is a very
Yeah, so the
close
scale,
view.
right, the scale.
And you're seeing, so that precipitous drop from
Right.
7,056 to 6,833 is not,
Right.
right, yes.
We can make the axle be greater.
No, I think this is good because it does give you, it really gives you a much more
But
granular
if we
look.
went from 0 to,
Yeah.
70.
It would look like nothing.
100, it
Right.
would be very flat, yes.
But it's small, the
Yeah.
change
Very
is
small
each
fluctuations.
year.
But it's a good demonstration in how statisticians can.
Yeah, they can debate how to.
Right?
Staffing, again, very, very happy to be sharing with you that we are planning to bring a proposed budget that supports our staffing levels. And that was important, and, we talked a lot about that and being able to fill deficits and also maintain and support our program. And we're very happy to be able to share you that we are well on our way there. All of our existing staff salaries are in alignment with our collective bargaining agreements. The retirement incentive, again, thanks to the board and thanks to our colleagues, was good, and it's good. It's good for our colleagues. It's good for the overall fiscal stability of the organization, both this year and next. We are yielding a savings of around $600,000 right now projected for 25-26.
And 26, 27 will be upwards of $1 million savings on top of that.
All the anticipated vacancies to be filled are reflected or going to be reflected. We also have at Mamaroneck Avenue, in addition of a self-contained classroom, full-time equivalent, a classroom teacher, teaching assistant, speech allocation. And at the high school, a .4 FTE for dance, reallocating a .4 FTE for foreign languages.
So there was .4 in the world languages that were not needed for this coming
Correct.
year,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
And then looking at, again, this is for your information, teachers' retirement system, employee retirement system, Swiss CHIP, statewide school cooperative health plan, and workers' comp. Does you want to say anything specific about these?
I mean, the rate is basically stable for teachers' retirement system of the contribution rate of salaries. ERS is going up 8.6% to 16.5 from 15.2. We knew during a long-range plan that we would be seeing another increase in health insurance. The composite rate is 8.94%, but still a better health insurance plan financially as compared to New York State health insurance plan. And workers' comp is pretty stable with last year's rates, and our loss ratio has gone down.
Which is great.
Yeah, and again, better than the market premium would be.
What does the loss ratio mean?
Say again?
What is the loss ratio? The loss ratio is the number of incidents
And claims they
Claims
have to
against.
pay out,
Claims
for
against, okay.
injuries.
Yep.
Medical or
Yep.
otherwise.
right. So fewer claims, fewer
Yeah.
injuries, which is great. Other contractual changes, again, describing things that you were well aware of.
Yeah, utilities are increasing, but more importantly, we're going to see, I think, a continued increase with property insurance, given all the environmental things that have taken place in the world. We're projecting 15% increase, but we've also had policy limits. So that's the other way that they're trying to mitigate the cost, but then you're unable to get insurance as you would normally get. So this past year, we bought supplemental flood
Right,
insurance
right.
because they limited the policy that they were willing to write for that. We did successfully, the City of White Plains assessor, thank you very much, Lloyd, reevaluated our sewer
90K.
assessments and reduced our sewer tax payments by $90,000. And of course, we've had contractual increases for our various consultants, our BOCES services, tuition for students. But what we also did, and this was part of the strategy to really try to look at how we can close the budget gap, is really took a hard look at every single expense line other than personnel to really see, based on prior year's trend analysis, how we can make some reductions, and we did. And then the increase for our new agreement with our pupil transportation, which is also reflected.
I don't have his permission, so I'm not going to shout him out by name, but thanks to our community member up in the Highlands, too, who reached out to us several months ago related to the sewer assessments, and that helped prompt the conversation, which was great. Debt service?
So this is just, depicting what we've already talked about, is the current construction serial bonds and our principal and interest payments that we currently have, and that we intend to issue debt in the spring and summer, both in '25 and '26. So we anticipate picking up $1.6 million in payments for principal and interest for '25, '26. So our total debt would be about $11.5 million. And again, less the 3.3 that we're going to use from the fund balance to help offset that. And then technically, and I can add this to the slide, if we back off the building aid of 3.9 now that we're expecting that, it'll bring us down to 4.3. And we get to 4.4 because we have a little piece of BOCES capital debt that we have to include in our calculation.
as we always do, just to, again, tax certiorari claims, and you're going to see that projected, or estimated rather, increase, but again, normal to what we were expecting. We are self-funded for our tax certs, which is great because that means we're not going out and borrowing. We have about a $3.7 million annual average over the last 10 years or so, 5.1 for 24-25 rather. And then our reserves we are reserved appropriately based upon what our potential outstanding claims are.
Legal counsel estimates 5.1 in payments that will be made, refunds made to commercial property owners who have put in claims. And they have provided us a detailed analysis of our outstanding claims, which are about 64.2.
And does the state monitor our tax certiorari reserve to make sure we don't go above? Is that one monitored like other reserves?
No, actually, you know, you have a prescribed formula of what can be maintained, and, you know, so I think we had, you know, a state audit a few years ago, and they said that you know, the way that we're maintaining that and calculating those reserves is proper. The cap on the reserve really has to do with the undesignated, you know, not for a particular reason that we're allowed to keep, which is limited to 4% of the ensuing year's budget, where counties, towns, villages don't have a
10%.
cap.
Right.
So it's that element that you'll hear. You'll hear that some school districts have put more than the 4% in that account, which is not in accordance with law. We're at 4%, you know, not good every year. Yeah, so.
And right, so during an audit though, right, the comptroller's office is going to look at all of your reserves, and you know, that's exactly where we want to be in accordance with the law. And so remember when there was conversations about who was over-reserved? You know, and that's not us. Our reserves are where they should be.
Yeah.
Has the state ever actually, when they pursue other school districts, have they enforced?
They threatened to take away state aid. Now, whether they you know, I don't know of any cases where they've actually done that. But this was certainly part of what was being talked about before the executive proposal came out, that the governor was indicating that she wanted to take away state aid, and you could use the excess of fund balance that you had in the undesignated account. So it's out there. They look at it. They pay attention.
As they should. I
And the
mean, again, right, it's
Rockefeller
tax, it's.
Institute
yep.
report also had some recommendations related to
Right.
increasing fund balance.
Right. All right, so moving into the departments, and again, you know, we're gonna give you the high levels here, and the good news is that this is mostly, if not all,
All cost neutral.
Yeah, cost neutral, so existing budget, so no new monies. Athletics, we again increase participation in athletics throughout the entire district, which is great. It's exactly what we want to see. We want to see kids getting out there and enjoying interscholastic athletic opportunities. We have, as you know, we've got the states happening right now in skiing, and we've got one of our Tigers out there representing us. We've got Tigers going to the states in wrestling, and so it's very exciting. Always great opportunities. Scholar athletes, summer sports academy, retention, recruitment of coaches has been great, and continued improvement of the athletic facilities. There's a lot to be proud of in terms of what we have to offer here for athletics. Safety and security, again, also making sure that we're keeping up with our recommended safety and security infrastructure plan. And we do. We have our district-wide meetings, as you know. We do get the feedback. We do make adjustments and changes. We are constantly drilling. We're constantly testing our systems. We were doing it all week last week. Constant.
I have a question
yep.
about security. So it was mentioned at the last district-wide safety committee meeting about hardening the vestibules at Highlands and at Rochambeau. And how are they accounted for here?
Yeah, that's part of, we have that on tap, you'll see, in terms of creating that secondary partition for when you walk in. And we've done that in all of our facilities thus far. We do need to make sure that secondary buzz scenario into facility
So
is.
that's budgeted here?
Yeah, we do have that coming up for next year. Yeah, one time, I think. One time only, right? Is that one time?
I-
The vestibules? Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's out of his regular budget.
Okay, okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, no, it's-
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So
it's-
Rochambeau and Eastview.
Eastview now? Okay.
Great question, right? Because that's something we've been working at for the last
Right.
7 years in all of our facilities. Yep. And I'm going to say more about, some more about that in a minute too, just in terms of those protective measures. SROs, local emergency management teams, all that's in here. Information technology, new communication platform, which is going to be great.
Yeah.
And hopefully our parents, guardians, and community members really, enjoy the new interface that'll be rolling out, and there'll be more to come on that. It should be a very easy end user process for integration of the data next academic year. And Parent Square is the one we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yep. Of course, also BOCES, COSER, and Aidable, and all of those good things. Upgrades to the network phone system. We're working on that now. Security cameras, consistently upgrading our security cameras. And we still have our annual installment purchase lease agreement with BOCES, which is, it's great. Again, all of our projects, which we just kind of talked about just in the previous presentation, continuing to work with our professionals on our capital projects plan. We've got our on-site manager that's going to be coming on from NYSERDA, which is going to be great and assist us with maintaining energy efficiency all throughout the school district. And then again, safety and security. So Diamond Defense ballistic film, really windows at our school vestibules. And again, these are creating a scenario where, you have that extra layer of protection for somebody that was trying to be forcefully entering one of the facilities. Seen these products tested, saw them tested at White Plains Department of Public Safety, very impressive, and looking forward to continuing to install them. Parking control gates at the high school in the back
Wow.
will assist with making sure we're keeping, the grounds secure overnight.
Yeah.
In addition to police, White Plains Police Department being around and back there regularly, and then expanding the security camera system as well. You want to talk about? We don't have to read, we kind of.
These are the maintenance projects that the operations department has planned, district-wide of what to do. It's out of their regular operating fund. We had the building condition survey done last year, and so it was kind of broken up, what's operational that can be done out of the annual budget for the department, and then what is really going to be capital projects. So these are the priorities that have been identified. And the same thing with working with the buildings, working with their head custodians and the principal, and what projects are identified, what's existing on that BCS, which is really our roadmap, our long-range plan, infrastructure roadmap that kind of tells us what we need to be doing, as well as input from everyone else.
And is the expectation then anything that's priority one will get done?
Will get done,
Yes.
and then, the anticipation is, and we don't usually, have issues,
Priority 2 as well.
Right, Javier and his plan, and his team are always getting proposals, looking to make sure that they're utilizing every dollar. Just like this year, we've completed priorities 1 and 2 and maintenance projects. They're looking to see if there's any additional projects with the savings within their budget
Right.
that they can bring forward to the board to say, we want to use our existing budget to tackle some of this stuff.
I'm not sure this was priority 1, 2, or 3, but last year it was mentioned the clock at Highlands was possibly going to get repaired at a meeting. Was that,
The-
is that
the
still,
big-
is that
yeah,
still happening?
tower.
Just not here.
We have done that in phases.
You do,
So we did already phase 1, we're finishing phase 2.
and, oh,
Right,
cool.
phase 2 will.
Outside.
I think the clock is already in the works, we're getting prepared.
Oh.
Now we're just finishing the windows.
Oh, nice, okay.
The windows and the waterproof.
Wow.
Great.
It's not like,
No, I know.
this is going up there and why, it's interesting, right? Like,
You just don't
it's a
crank.
big deal, fixing a tower clock.
Yeah, no, it's
Right.
exciting.
No
That's
no
out of-
Quasimodo up
That's out of
there.
the current year.
This, yeah, right,
Yeah,
okay,
it's this
yeah.
year, yeah.
But, and prior, like lacrosse shot clocks,
Right, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
storage container for Field 12, you might
Oh,
think,
right.
is that a big deal? Yeah, it is. 10 additional halo detectors for restrooms. What are those, Joe? Those are the so-called vape
Vaping,
detectors. They
right, right.
change, they detect the changes in the atmosphere, in the restrooms. And where are they gonna be? Random places.
Yeah.
And so that's all part of the phase-in. Oh, and how do you know? Well, they communicate directly with you, and let you know exactly when, exactly where, and,
Yeah.
the administrative team members, yeah. Not gonna tell you exactly who, playgrounds, walkways, curbing, all of this, really, really good stuff. I'm looking forward to that. Operational department highlights in transportation. Of course, new service agreement, 70 new buses. Partnership is going to be in place with Bus Patrol, so that's your cameras, making sure that anybody who's attempting to circumvent and go around buses are captured. And that's in partnership with the city. The efficiency study and the recommendations, all of that is being implemented in terms of routing, in terms of stops, and we've talked a pretty good deal about transportation. Assisting parents and guardians continuing to, who need any type of assistance with regard to the alignment of the start times in the elementary schools, and then looking for property, and continue to look for property that would allow us to meet that, as it is right now, the zero emissions mandate. That probably will be another area, I think, that is likely going to be adjusted.
Yeah.
I shouldn't speak for the governor. Based on what we're seeing right now in terms of the ability to,
The logistics are just.
right, just to
Right.
deal with the logistics in
And I
terms of
think some of the
implementation.
legislators are now advocating for pushing that date out.
Yeah, and again, right, mandate with a
Yeah.
date means I'm gonna create a market where I'm gonna keep the prices as high as possible, because I know that I have a
Right.
captured marketplace. And so that's challenging. That's real challenging. And also,
These 70 new buses,
Mm-hmm.
will any of them be electric buses, do we know?
none of these will be electric. These
Okay.
will be traditional
Okay.
diesel buses, yep. I still think the 5, I don't know if there's
They
something to
were
be running.
first generation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
They might be,
you
they might
know,
be,
They don't
are
really.
they hitting 10 years already? Wow.
It's a
Yeah.
long time, so, yeah.
I know, I remember touring that
Yes.
bus when it first
Yes.
came to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're great. They
Yeah.
really are. They're great.
Yeah.
And it's just how do we get to that place where it also makes sense for everybody
Right,
all throughout the
right.
state. Food nutrition, awesome. I mean, I can't say enough about the work that's taking place in terms of getting feedback and then
I've heard students say really positive things about it,
it's fantastic, and and we're constantly learning, and we're constantly trying to make sure that we're taking that feedback from our students, integrating into the menus, integrating into the types of food that's available. As another example from the GO that I shared, and I know Ann shared
Right,
with Dawn,
right.
if you are, let's say, if you don't eat meat, the protein selections are somewhat limited. And so what can we do to offer more protein options for students who do not eat meat, right? Conversation we're having, and it's
Yeah.
great. Can we get tofu more regularly for students who are interested in that? And that's where we're working on those kinds of things right now. Menu planning, recipe selection, student voice involved in that, marketing and communication, getting that out. Staffing, right? We need to continuing to keep pace with the demand. Because you can get breakfast, lunch, and snacks, demand's way up, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And then replacement and enhancement of walk-in freezers and
And
refrigerators.
program revenue covers.
Yes, this is not coming out of the budget, right? So cafeteria fund program covers all those costs.
And when I was down in Washington DC, I did tout our culinary program
Yeah.
here in meetings with legislators.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Right, because you talk about career technical education,
Yeah.
that's another piece that we really need to
Right.
be talking about, because BOCES does, they offer a great program for culinary arts,
Right.
and there's not enough room, right? Because there are more students who are interested in learning culinary arts than programming, and those are the types of partnerships that we are envisioning to be able to expand upon
And
in
we
the
are
future.
using so well our CEP funding.
Oh, absolutely,
So, yeah.
absolutely. New York is,
Yeah.
and look, and I think this is a conversation that really needs to take place nationally, right? How do we get the optimal learning environment? Sure, banning cell phones, getting cell phones and distractions out of the classroom, that's important. Making sure kids aren't hungry.
Hungry, right.
Right? Making sure kids aren't hungry. Making sure kids have access to the types of mental health, wellness, physical health, nutrition.
Yeah.
All of those things are really important. And the more we can do to support that at the public school level and support parents and guardians at home, the better off all of our kids are going to be. And quite frankly, the stronger the nation is. That's not being hyperbolic. That's the
No,
truth.
that
And so, you think about these types of options and these conversations that you're having, how can it be replicated? Well, the CP program is exactly that type of a program.
Quick question on Ann and Joe, but Ann, I spoke to Dawn at our last meeting in terms of our athletes when they travel and how can we have, food or some sort of meal or walk on or something. I know there was an event where, with the basketball team, where they were hungry. They went out, you can get stuck, in other teams as well, you can get stuck, you can hit traffic, and you're starving. So they come home ravenous. So I asked her about, is there anything that we can do with our current allotment to pack something so that they have something to eat on the way back from their competitions.
Yeah, and she's, working with the team at the high school and also with SED, because as long as it's tied to enrichment or
Yes.
or learning,
right.
then they're able to provide, meals, snacks, a separate program, and whether they end up taking that on the bus with them or
Yeah.
something. So that's what she's been trying to work on.
All right.
And trying to organize it in such that the high school is able to provide the information that's necessary so we can claim for reimbursement of being able to provide that.
Okay, that would be great.
Sports too, though, right? Because
Yes.
I feel like sometimes it was like not clear, like sports is not included.
We believe it does.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
as long,
it
as
is.
long as they're, there's after-school
Yep.
assistance, there's different components that those students can partake in, then they go on to their
Yeah, no,
athletic
they're,
program.
whatever their program, but that's a really important
Yeah.
point, and I'm glad you raised it, because we believe it does. Why? Because in addition to the traditional athletic practice training, we integrate components of academic support. That's a big deal
Right.
at White Plains High School.
That's right.
And so, we do, this is enrichment in all ways as far as we're looking at it. And again, I think a replicable, I'm glad it was brought up, because I think it's a replicable initiative that can support students in other school districts as well.
Right.
Is there a difference in participation between like the elementary school, middle school, and the high school? In terms of just regular, the meal participation every day, or like, is it more students getting lunch at the high school versus at the elementary school, more kids take lunch to school? I'm just curious.
Well,
I'll take a look, but I
we-
believe
yeah.
it's robust
It's
everywhere.
so it's increased everywhere.
Yeah.
Definitely, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident saying pizza day and chicken nugget day at the elementary school is a, bar burner.
But I can get that information.
But we can definitely-
I just find it interesting because my son never participated in it.
Yeah.
We always made him lunch, but when he got to high school, he eats the food every day. so.
The lunch at the high school, they are serving tremendous amount of meals, in excess of 1,000 meals a day.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So I'll get you the percentage of participation for sure.
Thanks.
So, we are now getting ready for, oh goodness, it's Monday, where we'll be presenting to the Finance and Audit Committee of the preliminary budget. But, again, and for folks who are watching at home, thanks for sticking with us. You're getting a real good sense of what that proposed budget's going to be and what it's going to look like. Well within the tax cap, supporting all of our programming, keeping our commitments in terms of maintaining no tax increases for capital projects, attending to our commitment in terms of staffing program and support for our students, and also closing those budget deficits that we were talking about at the beginning of the year,
Which we've been able to do.
which is great. So, finance and audit on Monday, and then back on the 10th. Probably won't need the 31st, but we keep it in there just in case. And then adoption on the 7th of April, the
Wow.
hearing in May.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yep.
Happy
Thank
100th
you,
day of school.
Thank you. You know, this is, you know, this is an important part of our process, so thank you. I mean, it's, you know, it's very intricate and complicated to make all the wheels and bells, you know, the wheels turn and the bells ring at the right time and in concert. So thank you for explaining. And I know you're gonna get other questions, because I'll have something and say, wait a minute, this is what I thought, was I right? But thank you, thank you.
No, we thank the
Deeply
board,
appreciate it.
For their help and their assistance, I mean, because it is complex.
Yeah, it is.
You know, and there's
Very.
a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And always, budget season's always, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so anybody who has questions can always email budget@wpcsd.us.
Yep.
You're gonna get an answer, you're gonna get a real person, and you can always reach out to us, and if you have questions about anything. And every document is available on the district's website in the All About the Budget section.
We'll get this up there tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, get it translated, the whole thing.
Yep, it'll be translated, yep, all that.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, next we'll go, do we have any updates? You know, we're just coming back from break
Just a break, and we just met a week before that.
Yes,
so, yeah.
yes,
Right.
yes, yes. So before we go, we have John Shepherd and John Mishavitz. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We just have to remember to make sure we go up to the podium and speak into the mic. We'll have the reminders, but thank you for the role you play here. And without further ado,
May I add one thing?
yes.
Congratulations to Rosemary.
Happy Rosary Time,
Having Rosemary Eller Day for the county of Westchester as posted on the, outside the county center. So
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you. It's exciting when you see your name. And I was out there quite a bit yesterday.
We have pictures to prove it.
I went out in the morning before church, then we came back up after church with my friends. Then my husband took me to lunch, and then I said, could you get a few more, because I want to frame one, so, but thank you.
The best was your husband pointing to you.
That's what I said.
That was great.
Thank you, I'll let him know. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.